current apex predators of the planet, duration pending, we enjoy the full variety of prey that our world has to offer as humans.
We eat everything, from the things we should to the things we maybe shouldn't.
But this was not always the case. Even after we descended from the trees, early hominids were firmly in the mesopredator range, smack dab in the middle of the food chain.
So who did our ancestors fall prey to? What carnivores were chowing down on ape appetizers and hominid hors d'oeuvres? Let's explore some of our own predators. So number 1 is the unknown bird of prey.
This animal is known for its enormous nests, chock full of eggshells and bones. In 1924, the chowed specimen was found, and it was deemed a member of the species Australopithecus africanus. Now, Raymond Dart saw this specimen as a near-perfect mosaic, meaning it had about equal traits between modern-day humans and our ape ancestors. Much like the sister species Australopithecus afarensis, or Lucy, we begin to see some of the more derived traits appear. We see canines continuing to decrease, a more ventral foramen magnum, brow ridges are beginning to disappear, and the cranial vault is growing in size. And it was actually this specimen that upset the reigning hypothesis of the time, the killer ape hypothesis. This hypothesis held that it was a bloodlust and a prey drive that drove our species to crave meat and evolve larger brain cases as well as tools. But the child proved to us once and for all that our ancestors were indeed predators, but they were far from top of the food chain. Without weapons, Australopithecus africanus was seated very medially in the food chain of ancient Africa.
The problem for Australopithecus africanus was its size. Males maxed out at under 5 feet, so you can imagine how small the juveniles were. When we look at the child's skull, we see a very particular type of trauma. Apparent score marks along the brain case, which is very similar to the type of damage found on monkey skulls preyed upon by birds. It can then be deduced that this poor youngster was plucked from the ground and spirited away to an enormous, ancient bird's nest, where it was promptly consumed. Adult Australopithecus africanus were likely too large to be carried away, but if you were a primate parent 2.8 million years ago, you had your eyes on the skies. Number 2, the big cats.
In the video about human and canine partnership, we saw that you and your dog share a co-evolution and how two mesopredators can work together to become an apex predator. Essentially, two former adversaries can indeed team up and befriend rather than foe. The same cannot be said for your cat. The big cats were not friends to the ancient hominids.
Frequently, we see paleoart depicting the formidable saber-toothed cats, the smilodons, pitted against a struggling band of archaic humans. But by the time we spread into the territory of the sabers, we had the advantage of high intellect and tools, as well as fire, on our sides.
But long before the first Homo erectus struck flint, our less cerebrally endowed relatives were on the lookout for anything that meowed.
1.2 to 2 million years ago, the Australopiths and the Paranthropines were confined to Africa, slowly but surely figuring things out. The former is likely our direct relative, while the big-toothed Paranthropines were likely our distant cousins. Enter the ancient leopard. As a known ambush predator, the fate of fossil SK54, a juvenile member of a tribe of Paranthropus robustus, was unveiled. The poor primate was attacked from behind and likely dragged alive back to the treetop lair of this prehistoric felid. Today, the vast majority of primate homicides committed by felids are leopard-on-monkey aggression. The ancient leopard was likely a unique species when compared to those that roam the African continent today, but the formula for a spotted ambush predator seems to be successful, so it was probably very similar. Number 3, the crocodiles. It's now 1.8 million years ago, and a member of Homo habilis, the oldest of our genus, is dutifully keeping an eye out for predators. Now capable of some tool use, these hominids utilized early home settlements as locales to congregate. Now large enough to avoid being plucked from the ground by a peckish bird of prey, H. habilis only needs to watch their back for stalking felines, and that's thirsty work. Unfortunately, lurking in the murky depths waits a different kind of ambush predator.
OH8's bones show crushing patterns that are very characteristic of crocodile attacks, and given bones recently found at Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania from a new crocodilian species, it's fairly safe to say that we know who the culprit is.
And that would be Crocodilus anthropophagus. Anthropophagus means human or hominid eating, thanks to its likely role in the deaths of both members of Homo habilis and our still extant cousin at the time, Paranthropus boisei. Anthropophagus was nothing to be trifled with either. In comparison to living crocs, the specimens of this species suggest size estimates approaching 7.5 meters long. If correct, this would make C. Anthropophagus larger than the largest recorded saltwater crocodiles, which are considered to be the largest living species of crocodile today.
This has actually led to speculation that the culprit of the deaths of Homo habilis and Paranthropus boisei was not an adult member of Crocodilus anthropophagus, but a juvenile, especially given the nature of modern crocodiles, in that the adults rarely leave anything behind.
The snout specimen we have is also deeper than that of modern crocs, suggesting a larger bite force for these megadillions. Essentially, big animals eat big meals, so poor Homo habilis would have been a true hors d'oeuvre for this ancient super predator. Number 4. Hyenas.
Homo heidelbergensis was strolling around northern Africa some 800,000 years ago, and it would eventually be this particular species that would beget some of the first members of archaic Homo sapiens, our own species. But at this time, heidelbergensis was still mulling about in the world's largest continent. The problem was, this area was still being patrolled by likely a southerly branch of the European cave hyena, given its presence in the Iberian Peninsula.
Weighing in at 225 pounds, the cave hyenas were tanks by any predatory standards, and had a bite force to match. They feuded with wolf populations, and later archaic humans to be Eurasia's next top predator. They would come to lose to both, thanks to the power of love and stuff. But prior to that, cave hyenas had a heyday in eating hominids. Tooth marks found on the leg bone of a long-dead hominin suggest that the poor soul had a grisly end, as found by a new study. The tooth marks and fractures on this roughly 500,000-year-old femur indicate that a large carnivore, likely an extinct hyena, chewed on the bone. Camille Jaugard, a researcher at the Department of Prehistory at the National Museum of Natural History in France, noted that it's not surprising that a large carnivorous predator would hunt down a hominin. It must have made an impact on our collective psyche, since thousands of years later we're making them the bad guys in our cartoon lion movies and our lion movie remakes. Number 5. Ourselves.
The last predator of our ancestors was themselves. Like a horrible B-movie twist, the monster was them all along.
Cannibalism of a likely ritualistic or social nature occurred among members of Homo neanderthalensis and Homo antecessor. Of course, it also occurs among modern primates, from baboons to chimpanzees to humans, so it should come as no surprise that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Hominid bones were found with hash marks characteristic of hominid tools used for scraping flesh, pinning, well, hominids with the gruesome deed. But the nature of the murder was not likely due to hunger. Humans, all hominids really, are notoriously low in nutritional value and in calories when compared to animals of similar size. We are incredibly bony, and our muscles just don't have as high a yield when compared to a tasty herbivore. In fact, an adult human male's skeletal muscle is only about 32,000 calories, compared to a red deer's 163,000.
So next time you say you're out here looking like a snack, just know that you're actually not. We are a nutritionally deficient snack, like circus peanuts. We are the circus peanuts of the prehistoric dinery. Of course, now we eat the relatives of pretty much every animal. So I guess the moral of the story is if you come after hominids, we'll just eat your descendants. Or,
Strip away their endangered species protections, or domesticate them, or turn them into handbags, or make them the villains in all the Disney movies, or imprison them in a social idea of working until they die, all while stripping them of their various rights and convincing them the entire idea is the American dream.
Congratulations, humans, you just played your